Hey friends, welcome back to Daily Sews and Stuff. I'm Brandon Daily, and this is not even the first, third, or fifth time that I've recorded this introduction. The purpose of this video is to take you through installing Affinity Designer on your computer and kind of give you the basics of what you see on your screen and shortcuts that I use and what each tool does so that you can more easily follow along on my whole playlist of Affinity Designer while I am using Affinity Designer to set up sewing patterns for projecting. Alternatively, I'm sometimes altering the sewing patterns for projecting. I got a new computer and I had the brilliant idea of when I installed Affinity Designer on this new computer, I would just record it and you'd be able to see exactly what it looks like when you get a brand new Affinity Designer on your computer. The problem is it was a brand new computer, and that also meant I needed to set up the software I use to record my screen, which I didn't do properly, and so not all of the screen got recorded. So I'm going to use a little bit of that old footage, because I did try uninstalling Affinity Designer and reinstalling it, thinking that it would kind of reboot the whole thing and let me do the whole video again. I was wrong. It does not do that. It remembers your settings, which, yay, it remembers your settings, but didn't really help with what I was wanting to do. I looked for a reset, I didn't find one, so I'm going to mix in some old footage where you can't actually see the whole screen, and the new footage where you can see the whole screen so that hopefully you're able to get the whole process. Now, in re-downloading it, I was able to record the process of that. I'll have to gray out some of my screen, but it allows you to kind of see that process a little bit. Once you download it, and you'll have the product key from the website, you'll have to kind of use that as you sign in. And I don't have video of that particular part because it didn't make me do it the second time. But it's pretty self-explanatory, and you'll see where to put it in, and it should be pretty easy. If you are buying it new, you don't have to worry about that because you're buying it new, and so it's just gonna boot right up for you. All right, let's start on this adventure. So I have just gone to my computer browser. I have searched Affinity Designer. I've gone to the Affinity website, affinity.serif.com. I'll put a link in the description box. And here I've got a couple of choices. I can tell it to buy now, choose which I have. If it is the very first time you're doing this, I would go for the free trial option, of course. See if you like it, stick around with it, and then eventually possibly buy it. If you have bought it before and are trying to download it on a new computer, then you don't do either of these things. You go to this little guy up here at the top, which is your account. And when you go to the account, you take it through and sign in. Once you've signed in, you can click on your account again, and you'll go to Downloads and Product Keys. Now, here's where I'll have to gray out some of my screen so you guys can't see my product key. You will see a blue button that lets you download, and so you can go ahead and click that, and it'll pop up the download or the Save As menu. I always save it on my desktop to make it easier to get to later. So down here in the bottom corner, I saw the download finished downloading, and so I am done with what needs to happen in my internet browser. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. And then down here on my browser right here, you can see that I have the Affinity Designer right here. So I'm going to double click on this, and it will bring up the installation. This is just like installing just about anything else on your computer. I'm going to tell it, yes, that's fine. Yes, make changes to my computer, and let it do its thing. Okay, once I get to this screen, I can click close, and I've got my program right there. So this I'm going to throw in the trash because I no longer need it, and I'm going to double click on the Affinity Designer icon. and it's going to go ahead and open up the program. All right, friends, here we can see what Affinity Designer looks like when you open it for the very first time. I have opened it, but I didn't actually do anything so far. So instead of making a new document or anything like that, I'm just going to go right here and click close. Actually, no. First, I'm going to go right here and tell it not to show me this panel on startup because personally I find it annoying. But you can leave that if you want to. So then I'm going to go here and put close because I don't need that. Now over here, we can see that this screen looks a little bit different. It's got something called assets here, and it's something called appearance here, and you know, there's various different doodads over here, none of which are important to me or what I am doing with Affinity Design. So we can drag that out here. We can push X for close panel. We can drag that out here, and we can push X for close panel. And then we've gotten rid of those extra guys. We did not need them, and they are gone. Perfect. All right, so you saw the old video that showed how to clear off the extra stuff we don't need on the left-hand side. That gives us more free space to work. And now, in order to see really any of the tools that we need to work, we're gonna have to open a file. There's a few different ways to do this. You can open it, you know, from your desktop or wherever and right-click it until it's open it in Affinity Designer. If it's a PDF, you'll have to specify. If it's Affinity Designer file, it will automatically open up in Affinity Designer. You can also do it through Affinity Designer. With File, you can open something recent, or I'll show you how to open it from scratch. So this will pop up your browser here, with a file browser, whatever this thing is called, and you can choose which one you want to open. You can open an Affinity Designer file, or you can open a PDF to work on. Once you open the PDF, you'll get this little button right here, or this little page right here. Usually, I just tell it okay. I've also done favor editable text over fidelity, which does sometimes make the font show up as a font better. It'll open up, and sometimes you get these little pop-ups. I generally just ignore those. And then you've got this pattern to work on. And all of your tools and everything are opened up. Sometimes you do need to run this through PDF Stitcher in order to unlock it and allow it to open. I've covered that in other videos, so I'm not going to go through it for this one. I am finding myself a little bit frazzled and having trouble systematically thinking about this. But I think the easiest thing is going to be is I start here on the left toolbar and work my way down, and we see all the different things there are to see. So at the top is the move tool, the arrow. It is the default, and it very much does what it says. It moves things around. I can grab something and move it where I want to. Next is the Artboard Tool. This is basically to draw yourself a new white space to work on. I have used this in the past. I'm fairly certain I've used it in my other Affinity Designer videos. I don't want to dig too deeply into what I would use it for right now because I'm trying to keep everything kind of basic, but this basically gives you another surface to work with, and the biggest thing you need to remember is that if you're going to export to Adobe, 200 by 200 inches is your max. This next tool is called the Node tool. And I am going to zoom in on a pattern piece to show us what that is. And I'm also going to hide a bunch of layers so that we can just look at one. So we're just going to look at one size right now, and I'm going to click it with the Node tool on. And you'll notice that these little guys popped up. We've got squares in the corners and circles here on the curved lines. And you'll notice too, sometimes in the corners, there tends to be kind of a lot of them for reasons that don't always make sense to me. And here, this is a corner with a square. All right, so if we want to work with this pattern and say, here, let's actually turn on two different sizes. Let's put this size back on 2. So say we wanted something that was this newborn width, but 3-month height. It's not really enough to, use the arrow tool and squish this down. If you'll notice, that kind of works because this is a very, very, very simple pattern, but in reality, things don't always mesh together quite that well, especially if, say, this were a shirt rather than a pair of pants. So, to fix that, we can use the nodes to manipulate how the pattern would go. And I can move the node over, move the node over, move the node over in order to change how this pattern fits together. Why, yes, I did just realize it would have been much simpler if I had lined up the end of the crotch curve in order to change the size of this pattern. The principle's the same, but think through things a little bit more whenever you're manipulating your own patterns. There's a lot of things you can end up using with the node tool, and I'm gonna kind of go up here to the top for a second to show you some ways that they can be changed. So if I click on this node right here, I can convert it to smooth, which will change it to that circle and make it, a curve rather than a square. I can convert it to smart, where it's going to kind of figure that out for me, or I can convert it back to sharp, and it will be that sharp corner, sharp angle. I can also do things like break the curve. If I click on this guy, this is now broken, and I no longer have a continuous piece. It's 2 separate lines. I can then close the curve again, which will close the curve and put it back together. And you can also smooth them. You can, instead of closing it, you can join it. If I was going to make shorts and I wanted to cut that piece off my pattern, I could put a new node right here. I could break the curve. I could put a new node right here and break the curve. And then I would use the move tool to make my shorts line. Oops. Nope, this guy. Why are you not? I don't want that. I want this. I would use the move tool to make my shorts line up, and I could highlight both of those, go back to the node tool, and I could actually join my lines there, right there, and join my lines right there. And now this is one solid piece, and that can all be deleted. Next comes a corner tool. To be completely honest with you, I have no idea what this does. I have never used it. I am sure it could do something useful for us, but it's not important to go through right now. This right here is the contour tool. Yet again, I am absolutely certain that this does something important that might be helpful to us. I have not used this tool. This is the pen tool. The pen tool can be very useful. The pen tool creates new lines that you can use. Let's say if you were adding your own shorts line or something like that. If you look at this right here, you can see how it might be kind of hard to see. They look very, very small, these lines. We'll talk in just a minute about how to fix that and make it thicker like this one that will actually be visible when you go to project. Now, if you wanted to, say, make that rectangle without drawing each corner, you can do that down here. We'll skip to that in just a minute. The pencil tool is kind of like the pen tool in that you can make a line, and once you've made it, the nodes will automatically appear, and you can edit those the same way you can on the others to make the shape whatever you want it to be. You can also delete some if you feel like there's too many there, and that will alter the shape. However, it's really, really hard to be very precise with this. This is a lot easier if you have something like a graphic tablet kind of thing. I don't have that. I do want to explore using this more with the pins on my interactive projector, but I haven't had a lot of time to work with that. But that can definitely be something that is helpful. All right. If we keep working down the line, we come to the vector brush. Now, the vector brush is another thing that can be helpful if you are doing certain applications. Again, it makes these nodes, and if you come over here, you can see that there's lots of different options about what it would look like. However, this is much more for like graphic design kind of things and not typically what we do. There are some designers that use that to make, you know, the sizing appear along their line, but when we're just doing this for ourselves to adjust our own patterns, it's not really something we need to look into. Here's the fill tool. I do not tend to use this tool because there is a better, easier way to fill the shape if that's what you want to do. So I'm going to skip that down and go to the transparency tool. Again, not a tool I use very often. I tend to use the opacity over here if I want to make something transparent. Image placer tool, when you click it, it opens this up. I'm assuming that means you can insert a picture from somewhere. Never tried it. The vector crop tool, it's a crop, just like you would use on a picture anywhere else. However, not something I have used. It could be helpful if there's a bunch of extra fluff maybe that you wanted to get rid of, but I tend to just delete the objects I don't want rather than crop them out. Here is a tool that I use very often. This is the rectangle tool, and to use the rectangle tool, you draw a rectangle. Now, let's say you don't want a rectangle. Let's say what you want is a square. You can hold down Shift and then draw a rectangle, and instead you'll get a square. Now, let's say you wanted that square to be a very, very specific size. Well, then you could come over here on the right-hand panel, go to this transform at the bottom, and over here you see some interesting pieces of information. The first one is the X position. I had to zoom out a bit so we can see. So if you notice, if you change the X position negatively to a smaller number, it moves it to the left. And if you change the X position positively, it moves to the right. I don't typically do that, but that's a really nice way sometimes to visualize how things are on your screen. The Y is opposite, or rather going the other direction. If you take some away, it moves it up on your page, and if you add some in, it moves it down on your page. Now you could see right here that I was basically letting the computer do the math for me. It already said it was at 104 point blah 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 inches, so I just typed -2 and that took it away. And I can just type +2 and that'll add it back in. You can also do this if, say, this were written in, well, here, let me do it like this. I'm going to take away 3 centimeters. It will figure that out for me. That's why if it says points right here, because you never did the thing at the beginning where you changed the document to inches, you can still type in exactly what you want in inches. You'll just have to make sure to type in the IN shortcut for inches or centimeters or whatever you want. So right here in this W, this is for width, you can type in a precise size for your square. So let's say that I need a 2-inch square. Now because my document is in inches, all I have to type there is 2, and it will change it to 2 inches. If I want a 36-point square, that will automatically convert it to 1/2 inch. But let's go back to my 2-inch box. That only changes the width, so I also have to change the height. I can also lock the ratio where anytime I type it in one box, it automatically changes it in the other one. And it doesn't have to be exact. Like if I had 2 and 5 and I locked it, then it would adjust accordingly. But we're going to go back to 2 and 2. Now I can use this 2-inch box. Let's say I needed this waistband to be 2 inches shorter. I could use this and then click. Let's say I need this waistband to be 2 inches shorter and access my tools over here to make it smaller. I use those a lot for measurements. It's what makes the most sense to me for measuring things. All right. Oh, let me bring my box back. I wasn't quite done with that. The other thing you can do down here in Transform is rotate. Now, obviously, it'll be a little less obvious on a square than, say, this shape. So let's use this shape instead. This is going to tell you the overall size of the shape, not necessarily how far from this corner to this corner. And you can get into some stuff to figure that out, but that's why I generally just use the boxes to give me spacing rather than try to figure out to take away 2 inches or whatever it is. So we're going to use the rotate. We can grab this guy and rotate, or we can type it in this box. It also has a drop down which gives you this tool. And you'll notice that the way it's swinging from this corner right here. We can change that. We can swing it from, since I clicked this right here, we can swing it from that corner right there. And also notice when I clicked that, that changed. So right here, if I've got the top left corner clicked, that's going to tell me the X position and the Y position of that corner. If I click the other one, it's going to tell me the X and the Y position of that corner. You can also choose by the center, which is helpful sometimes. But something that's even more helpful, is to turn on this function, which will give you this little bullseye, and you can pull this bullseye anywhere you want to. So I could pull it to, let's say I want to pull it to this crotch point. So I can put it right there on the crotch point. And now when I rotate, it will rotate exactly on that. That is super useful for things like bus starts. Oh, and also over here, by rotate is the, what do they call this? It's like the slant. I don't know. I guess it's for slant. I have absolutely no idea why we would ever need that for patterns, but it is there. All right, so we went over pretty heavily how to use the rectangle tool. These other tools are the same. The ellipsis tool, you can make ovals with, or you can hold down shift and make circles. The rounded square one, don't really know why you do that, but you can. This little donut can be super helpful in making circle skirts, because you can actually change both circles separately. I don't know if you can precisely get into the measurements. I haven't super looked into that, but I thought it was really cool. There's also triangles, diamonds, trapezoids. I mean, on and on and on. Lots and lots of shapes that if you need to get into, you can. Here's another one I actually use pretty often, which is the text tool, or what does it call it? The frame text tool. You just pop it in there, and then you can start typing. And when it looks really tiny, you can use Control-A to highlight it, and then come up here to the top and change the size of the font. Sometimes if you're changing something that has already been done, let's say I'm changing this guy and I want to make it even bigger. I'm going to make it like 500. It gets all funky. Part of the solution is over here to change this spacing to the same size, and then also to change your text box to actually show it. So actually here, if I look like I just need to move this guy, right? But it's all smushed up. If I change this over here, that unsmushes it. So whether you are editing somebody else's text or making your own, that can be very, very, very helpful. You will also notice though that some letters actually show up as lines rather than as text. So this says shorts line lengthen / shorten. I know it says that, but I can't really read it because it's not showing up as text. I can make this smaller, which would help. I can also move it, which would help. So I don't think there's a way to convert it to text again. If there is, I would love to hear about it. Nope. But there are some things you can do sometimes to fix that a little bit. And I don't know if it's because it was kind of on top of something else, or if it's, I don't really know why sometimes the text stays as text and sometimes it converts. I think it also has to do with maybe the font choice. This, however, is a fairly simple font, so who knows. Anyways, those are just some quick fixes for this. Now, here's something else I like to use sometimes, the color picker tool. I want to make another box or another line exactly the same color as this. I use color picker, I click it over here in my color swatch. It's going to, well, here. All right. I use my color picker tool. I pick that color and it's going to automatically choose that color for me. And then I am able to use the pen tool to make something that exact same color. Let me try that again. That exact same color. Nope. I want the line to be that color. There we go. The hand tool is just like in Adobe where you use it to move around your page, but you don't necessarily, pick up and move anything on your page. And the zoom tool is exactly that. All right. Let's dig in a little bit deeper with a few things. So I was just trying to change this line and you saw me click a bunch of things. There's lots of things I can do to change this line. I'm going to make it a box. I'm going to use a box. All right. Now, there's also things I can do to change this box. Let's say that I don't want it to be filled in. I want it to be clear on the inside. I can click this button right here, which will make it not filled. I think it's called no fill. I can change the line color to any old line color I want. I can mess with this as much as I want. I can then, let's say I want to do that, but I don't want it to be super. I can change the opacity of it. I can get super precise and be like, I want it at 50%. Stroke. You can change the line to make it really thick or not there at all, or really easy to see with the projector. You can change the line from this curve at the end to a square, and you can change, well, that would be for the end of the line. You can change the corners with the join tool here, and you can make it where it's at the center of the line, the outside, or the inside, which can be really helpful, like if you're making a calibration grid for yourself. I tend to go for the center, but if you want to be super precise, you can do that. You can make it, this is easier to show with a line. Let's show with a line. You can make it have an arrow on one end or both ends. You can make the arrow at an exact spot or less precise. You can swap them if you have them different from each other. And you can take away the line style altogether. You can make it dashed. Whenever you make it dashed, you can change how often the dashes repeat. And I do not see where, there's usually a thing that pops up that lets you choose the dash style that I'm not seeing right now, and I don't know how to get to. But that's fine. We're not usually trying to make dashes. We usually want them to be a solid line. That's kind of this top little guy. I like to leave it on color. If you leave it on stroke or brushes or swatches, it takes up kind of a lot of this panel, so I tend to leave it on color if I'm not doing anything specific, because that takes up the least amount of space, and that gives me more room to see all of my layers, because I do like to see all of my layers. All right, so this is my layers panel, and this lets me see all of the layers. Earlier, I turned a bunch of layers off. If we zoom way out, I can turn a bunch of layers back on, where you can see all the different layers of the pattern. Sometimes, especially after you run it through PDF Stitcher, this doesn't work quite right, and you'll have like pages grouped by themselves, which can be kind of annoying, but it's, you know, it works, and we are able to fix that, and I showed how to do that in one of my other videos if it's not working. And then you can make the layers come out and go in, and each individual thing within a layer can be taken away, which is kind of hard to see here. I guess let's do it with the biggest one. Here we go. We can take things away individually within a layer. And there's just too much going on right now to see that. But individual layers can go away, and then individual things within a layer can go away. You can also just delete entire layers rather than, you know, hide them if that's what you want to do. All right, there's here effects, nothing I have ever done before. Styles, nothing I've ever used before. Text styles, never used it before, although it could be useful. And stock, again, never used it before. I only use the layers panel. Down here is the transform box that we've already talked about. There's also the history box, which can help you do some backs, some undos. And then there's the navigator. And we'll get into the navigator right now. So this zoom tool over here, now I literally just deleted, uninstalled, and reinstalled this on my computer. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. In the past, I had tried to make this zoom an exact percentage. And whenever I typed it, I'm going to go over to the calibration grid to show that. Whenever I typed an exact percentage, it would round it to the nearest number. And right here would be exactly what is right here. This is now showing a decimal number. And so it's actually seems to be that maybe whenever you're typing it, you can actually get those incremental differences in your zoom, which would be awesome. That would mean we could project from project from Affinity rather than exporting to Adobe. That would be really cool, and I hope that this really works when I go test it later. So if you were projecting from Adobe, you can use this Navigator tool to really help you go somewhere. So if 32.4 is what I'm zoomed in on, I can use this guy to kind of take me down the path to, okay, now I'm going to cut the waistband. Okay, now I'm going to cut the pants. I can also type in this box, and again, this number will round itself, but this number does not. So I'm hoping that means we can actually really get a precise zoom. You can always do the zoom up and down. That's going to go through its presets though, and then if you click with the zoom tool, it will zoom in. Now, here are some shortcuts. What I use most often is the scroll wheel on my mouse. If I scroll up, that moves the document up. If I scroll down, it moves it down. Now, if I hold on to Shift while I scroll up, it moves the document left or right. And if I scroll down, it goes the opposite way. And then I can do the same thing with Control. This is usually how I zoom in Affinity. I hold down Control, I scroll up, that zooms me in. I scroll down, that zooms me out. And then I can go left and right and up and down and center this guy back on the page. I find that super intuitive and easy to do when I'm just working on something. However, that would not allow me to get super precise as far as, you know, calibration. So that's a separate topic there. But I do think that that is helpful down here in this Navigator thing. For the most part though, I leave it on transform. Number one, it's super useful, and number two, it's very tiny, which gives me more to see in my layers panel. Let's talk about some other tools we might need. We talked about the transform origin. We talked about when we have, let's see, the nodes accessed, that gives us these different options here that we use. These guys right here I have not been using. If it is instead chosen as a move tool, you can have access to the flip horizontally, which is great if you're wanting to mirror or make a not cut on fold. And then you can do it vertically if that's what you need instead of horizontally. You can also turn things, which is helpful sometimes depending on how a pattern was made. They have it funky on the page because it was meant to be an AO. You can turn things really easily that way. You can also turn things by using the rotate, 90 degrees, negative 90 degrees, 180 degrees, 0 degrees, whatever you need. Going a little bit further into shortcuts that I use. You've seen me use this a lot, and you don't even know it. Let's move this guy over here. I want to move him back exactly where he was. Control Z. That is undo. It does whatever you just did. It is my absolute favorite tool, and I use it all the time. And then if you realize you actually did want to do that thing, Control Shift Z will redo it for you. Control X is like it always is, where it cuts it, and Control V pastes it, Control C copies it, and then Control V pastes, and now you've got two. Or if an object selected, you can hold down Control Shift, and that will make another copy for you. Also, you can hold down Control while you move something, and that will, see that yellow line? That will make it move in only right corners from where you moved it from. If you hold down, oops, that's wrong. If you hold down Control, that's when you get your second piece, but I usually use Shift Control because it'll move it precisely. Like, I'm going to want to use Shift Control when I do this because I want it to be precisely moved so that I can match that up to have my mirrored cut. Does that make sense? That made sense in my head. Hopefully that made sense to y'all. All right. Delete deletes things. Off the top of my head, that is all of the shortcuts I can think of. Oh, one other shortcut that might be helpful if we really can use this to project is Tab. Tab takes you to a much more simplified view, and I would actually choose this tool first. It takes you to a much more simplified view where you can project from, possibly. So I would push Tab again to go back. There are a lot more things that you can do in this. A lot of ways to really get into some stuff, but so far these are the tools that I use the most often. Now, we have worked on this, we're done working on it, we've changed a bunch of things. We want to make sure that we use probably my second favorite shortcut, which is Control S, and that is save. Now, because I haven't saved this yet, it's going to do a save as, and it's going to ask me to save it as an Affinity file, and I can go ahead and do that. And then if I do some more changing, then I can hit Control S, and that will then save it, just save the changes that I've made. Now, I'm all done with this, and I'm ready to export it to open it in Adobe. Well, I can go to export. There is a shortcut for that. Frankly, I don't remember that. I export it like this. It'll open as PDF, and you can tell it, you know, different things you want to do here. You can tell it not to export any hidden layers if that's what you want to do. Otherwise, you're going to do the whole document. Sometimes it will say whole artboard if you've got some artboards there, but generally you want to do the whole document. You can also preview the export when complete, which will open up Adobe, which depending on your computer might be totally fine or might be terrifically awful. So up to you. You can also do like an SVG. That's what Cricut uses to cut things. You can do a GIF or a JPEG or a PNG if it's, you know, a picture that you're wanting to post somewhere or anything like that. But typically I'm just exporting as a PDF so I can go open it in Adobe. So that's what I do right here. There is more. You can get into a bunch of stuff here. Again, I don't really do that. I haven't had any problems at all with what it does, just at kind of the preset here. And there are more presets if you really wanted to get into it. All right, so then you click export and it will export it for you. You can change the name now. They'll obviously save it as a PDF, and you can change where you want it to be. And I'll go ahead and click save. Oh, actually no. I'm going to change the name of this because I don't want to mess up the original. I'm just going to do After AD for right now. Now, you guys saw me save this right before I went to export it, right? Oops, usually that's really fast, but this is a pretty big document, so it's going to take it a minute. I could have made this a lot faster by deleting a lot of the layers that I don't need, especially that big black layer, you know, that sort of thing. I've also got my computer recording the screen, which takes up a lot of processing. So you guys saw me save this before I exported it, but now when I go to close it, actually I'm just going to close this one document. It's going to ask me again if I want to save it. I don't know why. I just say yes. So this is open. The program is open without having a file open. I can go to Open Recent and open it again, or I can, you know, open something brand new. I can make a new document if that's what I want to do. In which case I would just, I could choose one of these guys, like choose a really big architectural one, or like say that's the size of my mat, or I can just make my own and I can say I want it to be 200 by 200 in inches, oriented that way, and go ahead and create that document. Or I can close the whole thing. Thanks for watching. If you will notice, yes, I'm wearing yet another shirt because this is yet another day. This video has, so many things have gone so wrong with this video, but hopefully in the end it has created a usable and helpful video for you. If you want to dive into this a little bit more, I do have some resources for you. I'll put a bunch of links in the description box. Places like the rest of my playlist that has all the other ways that I use Affinity Designer in more detail to adjust my patterns. There's also on that playlist a video that I used when I first started out. It's a super long, super detailed video, and really you only need like the first 20-30 minutes of it to understand the basics of what you need for sewing. There is a new group that was started by an internet friend of mine, and it's about using Affinity Designer for sewing patterns. It's mainly aimed at those of us that are, you know, users of patterns, but if you're a pattern designer that uses Affinity Designer, we'd love to have you there too. I will put a link to a shortcuts for Affinity Designer, like spreadsheet. There's a lot there. I went over the ones that I use most often in this video, but you might find something else there that you really want to use that you find helpful. I'll also post a blog link to my blog about this video, and then also to another person's blog. She is a pattern designer and she uses Affinity Designer for her pattern designing, and again, not everything totally applies, but I found some useful information there, and I actually have it saved because I plan to go back and watch the video. I've only read the blog, I haven't watched the video to really get into some more detailed stuff. I really hope that after watching this, your Affinity Designer can look just like mine. That was the #1 complaint I had on my other videos over using Affinity Designer. People were like, my screen doesn't look like yours. I don't know how to make it work. And the other complaint was, your head covers the part you're talking about. So hopefully this video solved all of those problems and you're able to follow those videos a little bit better now. You can find me in that new Affinity Designer group. Like I said, the admin there is super kind. She's the one who showed me how to do that target rotating thing. And you can find me in the Projectors for Sewing group. You can find me at my own Facebook group, which is Daily Sews and Stuff Friends. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram under Daily Sews Stuff, something like that. Links in the description box. And at my website, dailysewsandstuff.com. I think I've said everything I need to say in this video. Thank you for watching. I really tried to get into a little bit more with editing, as frustrating as so much of this video was, because so much went wrong in the recording of it. I think the editing of this video is kind of stepping it up a little bit for me. My new computer can do a lot more things, and so I'm really hoping that you guys see some benefit from that, and that I just keep getting better at these things. Alright friends, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.
Keep watching my videos, like, subscribe, and comment.